never faced anything like this. Let them come. Everything you cared for will be consumed.
They've never faced anything like this before.
Let them come.
Hello everybody and welcome, this is Common and Cam. In today's video, we're going to be comparing and breaking down the alternate cut of the film where it had a much darker ending. Like seriously, a much darker ending. Stephen Caple Jr., the director of the movie, has confirmed the alternate ending in a recent interview. He discusses the various test screening changes and deleted scenes. Now of course I will be entering spoiler territory because I'll be comparing the original test screening and the final cut of the film, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, I'd recommend you to go watch it and then come back to this video so you don't ruin it for yourself, because who wants to do that? Of course, with every blockbuster movie, there are several changes made along the way, and Transformers Rise of the Beast is no exception. In fact, it went through many changes, much like its prequel, the Bumblebee movie, that cut out a lot of its connections to the original 2007 Transformers movie, such as changing the opening of that movie, where we got the Cybertron scene instead of Bumblebee just merely running away from Sector 7, and then also getting rid of the Megatron Sector 7 scene, where we would have seen him in a post-credits that would lead up to the events of the 2007 movie. And without further ado, let's just dive straight into it. Now before we go ahead, back in July, TFW 2005 user Cyberborg Graptor, a well-known member of the boards, was fortunate enough to see the test screenings, so most of these sources come from him, which yes of course you can take with a grain of salt, but I consider it credible considering that Stephen Caple Jr. has actually recently confirmed this in his latest interview. He confirms the much darker ending they had originally intended for the film, and he confirms a few other things as well, but I'll let you know when we get to them. And first up, we'll talk about the original opening for the movie, that is the Transit and Optimus Prime fight scene. Now this was a hard blow for Transit fans out there, but there is hope. Because this scene was 80% done with its visuals, we are very much likely to see this on the DVD extras. Stephen Caple Jr., the director of the movie, has hinted at that, so for all you Transit fans out there, you can rejoice. Now in the original test screening, originally the movie would have opened up with Optimus Prime's monologue about how the last few years the Autobots have stayed hidden as they continue to be hunted by Decepticons, but Prime's still determined to find a way to get back home and take the fight back to Cybertron. And Optimus Prime would have a line about how the hunted have now become the hunters. Visually, you see the stars that transition to the wet streets of New York as Prime drives through the city and pulls into a bus lot. He transforms, as you saw in the second trailer, and announces, "I know you are here," to Transit. A bus pulls out, revealing a Decepticon logo on the front grille, and transforms, with Transit saying things like, "You can't find us all, Prime. We'll get you eventually." A fight ensues between Optimus Prime and Transit, and it's pretty awesome. There's a part where Prime grabs Transit's head and pushes it into a nearby bus and grinds it through the inside of the bus. Prime demands to know where the Khan's ship is, but Transit laughs and tells Prime that he blew up his ship just for the satisfaction of knowing that the Autobots can't get off the planet to save his Autobots back home on Cybertron. And Transit even goes as far as to show Optimus Prime a hologram of Autobots being executed as they swear Optimus Prime will return to save them. Ooh, now that is pretty cruel, Transit. We could have had another cliff jumper situation there. And this, well, gets Prime really mad and uses his axe to kill him. No doubt he would have ripped off his head or something. Now the test audience has described that they originally used the Dark of the Moon axe and not the original axe that we got in the final cut. The scene would have ended with Optimus dragging Transit's body and dumping it into a nearby river as it floats. Transit lands on top of a revealed pile of cons, so you know that Optimus Prime has been doing this for quite a while. Prime would have ended the scene off with a monologue about not giving up on finding a way off Earth and back home. This would have then transitioned to Noah back at home. Wow, that is a cold open. I can't wait to watch this. Here's hoping it is on the extras of the DVD. I feel like this is an important scene for Optimus Prime's development. I feel like they could have done a little bit more of Prime in the movie to sort of establish his anger and frustration and why he has such a temperament with the humans. To compensate for this scene being cut, they added in the line of Mirage explaining to Noah why Optimus Prime blames himself for the Autobots being stranded on Earth for 7 years. Now that kind of dialogue is filler. It would have been cool if we could have actually seen that instead of having Mirage just explain it to us. Such a shame that got cut. I don't think it would have harmed the film by just adding it in. At best, it could have been like a 3-minute scene. Now this would have added a horror element to the movie, and well, it's not exactly sort of a kid-friendly opening, so I imagine they wanted to just pull back just in case. I don't know if any kids out there got scared of Optimus Prime murdering a bus. Now I would have loved to have had both scenes, but if I had to have picked one, it would have been the Maximal scene, because we needed to establish the threat of Unicron and Scourge. Because if we didn't have this scene, we would have had to have waited until about an hour or so to actually see like Optimus Prime or Cheetor and Rhinox. And considering this movie is called Transformers Rise of the Beast, we want to see some beasts. And this scene definitely mirrors the B-movie Cybertron sequence, where the Autobots had to abandon their home due to the threat of the Decepticons, much like how the Maximals had to abandon their home due to the threat of the Terracons and Unicron. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Would you have preferred this opening scene, or were you satisfied with what we got in the end? Now there was a shot cut of Airazor flying over New York after Elena discovers the Falcon boss, because it felt pretty strange that Airazor just kind of appeared out of nowhere, so that would have at least established the presence of Airazor, so it wouldn't have seemed that she was just coming out of nowhere. Now the scene between Bumblebee explaining that humans aren't all bad to Optimus Prime was supposed to have been much sooner, before the museum. In fact, the whole scene of Optimus Prime, Arcee and Bumblebee waiting for Mirage and Noah outside the island was an additional scene. Same goes for Mirage explaining Optimus to Noah, like I already mentioned in the car. Since Optimus didn't have the beginning monologue explaining the situation, they needed to add that scene to establish that instead. There was actually a shot of Bumblebee taking out a Polaroid photo of him and Charlie Watson, showing Optimus Prime that he made a friend. Steven Caple Jr. confirmed this himself, and I would have loved that. It would have been such a cute moment that even after 7 years, Bumblebee is still thinking of Charlie. He is hoping she returns in the sequels. Another well-known cut of the movie was Wheeljack and Arcee's relationship. I was wondering about this myself. So when the Autobots land in Peru, Arcee finds out that Wheeljack is joining them and gets flustered. Gee, I would too by looking at his face. Wheeljack is coming? She asks. Later on, while Arcee is inside Wheeljack, waiting for Noah and Elena, Arcee mentions how it's been a long time since they've seen each other, and Wheeljack embarrassingly says, "Yes, it's been a while since you've been inside me." What? Now it feels like this joke was replaced with Mirage, because Mirage makes a joke in the movie about how Noah has been inside him when he just refers to Mirage to his brother Chris as workmates. And in the final battle, it would have had Wheeljack show more concern for Arcee when they get swarmed. One of the main issues I had with Wheeljack in this movie was the lack of Wheeljack. So it's a shame that they cut all this out, because it would have really given a lot more weight to Wheeljack's character, a lot more depth, because I barely remember him being in the movie because he said so little. He made one joke or two, and that was it. It's a real shame we didn't get to see this side of the Autobots, because this would have been like the first time we had sort of a romantic situation in these movies. And it makes the audience feel a little bit led on, because while all the promotional material for this movie heavily featured Arcee and Wheeljack together, I felt like Wheeljack served no real purpose in the movie except for cannon fodder. Because this is supposed to be a guy who is an inventor, and we barely saw him. In fact, we didn't see him invent anything in the movie. It would have been nice to have had a scene of Wheeljack fixing Optimus Prime's wounds from his battle with Scourge at the museum. Another unfortunate scene that was cut was Wheeljack lending his glasses to Optimus Prime to zoom in when they are staking out the city in Peru. We would have had a moment where Optimus Prime looks incredibly goofy wearing his glasses. This would have added more comedy amongst the Autobots instead of having to rely on Mirage giving all the jokes. Now let's talk about Airazor's introduction to the Autobots. That was slightly different in the test screenings. Since there was no original Maximal planet opening, like Optimus in 2007, she uses her eyes to show holograms of her planet for a quick scene of a bunch of generic beasts being chased by two Scorponok and Scourge. As Scourge fires his blaster at them, she then shows the Autobots Unicron and tricks Noah and Elena's vision with holograms, as if Unicron was in the sky about to consume Earth, showing them the threat that now faces them. There would have been a line of Optimus Prime saying that he thought Unicron was just a myth, But Airazor reassures him that he's real, and that scene where Elena says, "It's not real, it's not real," was in there too. Of course, that line with Elena was used very heavily in the trailers, which many people noticed was cut from the film.
This can't be real. This can't be real. Oh, okay, it's real.
Overall, I'm not too fussed that this wasn't cut. Maybe it would have been nice to have added Optimus Prime's line that he thought Unicron was a myth, but I can understand why they wanted him to already know about Unicron, because, well, he is a Prime, and considering he's bearing the matrix of leadership, he should know about this kind of stuff. Airazor and Elena would have had more communication between each other. In the scene where they are waiting for Stratosphere, there's a part where Elena mentions how she bets Airazor was making bots turn their necks as she flew by, with Airazor agreeing, "I do know how to shake a tail feather or two." In fact, that whole scene was different. Stratosphere doesn't even show up. It's just them grouping up and having more of a dialogue. And then someone asks, how are they going to get to Peru? Smash cut into them inside Stratosphere. Mirage makes a joke that they are probably going to crash, but Stratosphere responds by saying they are safe inside him. Again, we've got a lot of inside jokes going off here. In this scene, Noah and Elena's dialogue was a bit different. I don't think Elena ever mentions about her dad, and Noah explains that he worked with military people like Optimus Prime before, and he doesn't trust him. Now, another scene that was cut that we saw in the trailer was when Noah and Elena go through the caverns to find the second key, but get attacked by the freezer. After Noah blasts the freezer, they get discovered by Cheetor and Rhinox. The Maximals chase the humans around the caverns for a while, until Rhinox chases them to a crack only the humans can fit through. That's when they lead out of the jungle to be stopped by Optimus Primal. Now, we actually saw this scene in the first teaser where Rhinox is roaring. Now, this without a doubt should have been in the movie, because one of the biggest sins of this film was the lack of Rhinox, one of the best characters to come out of Transformers Beast Wars, and he didn't even speak. David Sobolev was hyping up this character so much, and we didn't even get to hear one single dialogue. At least, I can't remember. Let me know in the comment section below if he actually says one line and I'm just misremembering. It's just that honestly forgettable, but I don't think he actually said out. Now let's talk about Scourge's character that went through a drastic change between the cuts. He had some lines that made you know he was being forced and tortured to work for Unicron. For example, when Scourge and Unicron have a meeting, Unicron ends it by threatening to make his life a living hell if he doesn't find the remaining transwarp key, and Scourge responds to himself afterwards with, "It already is a living hell." And when Scourge meets Primal after corrupting Airazor, there was some dialogue between the two that made it seem like they already knew each other personally, but the test audience member can't remember the exact words. Near Scourge's death, Optimus Prime tells him to stop the transwarp keys, and Scourge mentions something like, "It's too late, even if I wanted to, I couldn't stop the keys now." In the final cut of the film, he's very much just like a loyal dog that will do anything that Unicron tells him to, so having those lines of dialogue would have added a lot more weight and depth to the character. Now we kind of get a tease of Scourge's character when he gets tortured by Unicron for the first time after delivering half of the key, so it appears in the test screening version there was a lot more depth to him, which I personally think they should have kept. Now most of these scenes featured his original promo art design, but they did show his final design for a split second, so the test audience member knew that they were going to change it eventually. Another design change was Mirage's head crest. As we know in the final cut it was blue, but in the original test screening it was white, much like how we've seen on some posters for the movie. But one thing that he never had in the test screening was the mask that we know also from the CG promo renders. And another thing to note about Mirage is that during the museum scene, when he turns into a garbage truck, they made it more clear that the back half of him was actually a hologram. That was one of the many things I was questioning when I was watching this movie, like, wait a minute, does he transform with that as well? In our heads, we now know it's a hologram. Now Optimus Prime's character arc in the test screening was a little bit confusing. He seemed to not like humans at all for the majority of the film, until Noah decides to not shoot the transwarp key. Then, after Airazor's death scene, Optimus Prime makes a speech about how great humans are and how wrong he was. The test audience member explains how jarring it was how quick Optimus Prime decides to trust humans and protect Earth, and I agree. One of the many things I liked about the movie was seeing the natural progression between Optimus Prime and Noah's friendship. It's good to really pad out that trust and care he develops for Earth. In this same speech, it would have had Optimus Prime say, "For Cybertron," Optimus Primal would have said, "For Earth," and Rhinox jumps in and says, "For home." And this seems to shock everybody as they all turn to look at Rhinox and Noah says, "Wait, you can talk?" Damn, we were so close to getting a Rhinox line. Now a bit of this scene is in the trailer when Noah says, "How big can this guy be?"
How big can this guy be?
He eats planets. So, like, way bigger than a planet.
But of course, we know it was cut. Another slight change in the test screening was actually Airazor's death. Originally, she didn't talk back to Primal. And Optimus Primal doesn't crush her chest, he actually snaps her neck instead. I'm glad they changed this. I'm happy with the final version that we got in the movie because it just kind of shows that Airazor was actually trying to fight, and snapping her neck is just a little bit too cruel. Now during the scene when Unicron is entering through the transwarp portal, he sucks all the energon from around the area, which is what reactivates Bumblebee, and in the test screening cut he is considered simply dead. There's no lines about possibly saving him, so they just like kind of carry his body around throughout the whole movie. I guess it's good that they added that extra line of dialogue on there was a slight chance that Bumblebee could have come back with an energon fuse, but that kind of undercuts his death a little bit and the impact of it. The movie has a tough time sort of defining what makes a character dead. Like you'd think that getting stabbed through the chest was pretty much it for you, but yeah, it feels like they could have explained that a little bit better. Now let's talk about the final battle. Speaking of which, let's talk about Mirage's fate. In the original test screening, Mirage first turns into a shield-like form and protects Noah from Scourge's attacks. Then the scene plays out like normal and he turns into the suit, but this doesn't even hint at him being okay. That version ends on the assumption that Mirage sacrificed himself to become the suit, and that's it. Of course, as we know in the final cut, we saw the mid-credit scene where Mirage was okay. Now I am conflicted on Mirage's fate. I really grew to like his character and I didn't want him to die, but when he did die, I kind of felt like that sacrifice was earned, but then that felt kind of undercut when he was able to be fixed so easily by Noah. And that's what I was making a point about earlier. This movie has a tough time kind of defining on when an Autobot is dead. Now the final battle had a good amount of changes on how it was approached. The original plan to destroy the console was using Airazor's deceased Spark as a bomb. At some point in the battle, they lose the bomb, which, you know, I'm glad they cut that part out. That would have been just a little bit too weird using a robot corpse like that. When Unicron drops the Scorponok onto the battlefield, Noah yells, "What are those things?" and Primal responds, "Predacons." I felt like this line was needed considering we didn't actually hear the name Predacons even once, so this would have helped establish them. Now let's talk about one of the biggest changes of the film, that being the ending. This was actually confirmed by Stephen Caple Jr. himself. And I actually kind of prefer this ending more, only a little bit, to what we got in the final cut. So in the test screening version, when Optimus Prime destroys the transwarp key, instead of being saved by Noah and Optimus Primal in the final cut, in the test screening, he actually went up into space with Unicron. Now there's a good chance we'll actually see this in the deleted scenes of the extras Stephen Caple Jr. has teased. But yes, Optimus Prime gets sucked up into the portal. The movie would have ended with only 4 Autobots: Bumblebee, Arcee, Wheeljack, and Stratosphere. And all of the characters feel really bad about Optimus Prime's sacrifice. And the film would have simply just ended with Noah embracing his family. And Mirage would have stayed dead. And there was no G.I. Joes in sight. And in fact, they did 2 different endings, one with the G.I. Joe card, and then the second with a Sector 7 card. Of course, this must have been a last minute addition because they didn't know which direction exactly they were going to take the Transformers timeline. Now one of the reasons why this ending was changed was because Stephen Caple Jr. wanted the film to end on a more uplifting note, with Noah getting the medical care for his brother Chris, and of course with Noah and Mirage's friendship living on. The Mirage one can be left up for debate with me, but the one that they should have definitely have kept was Optimus Prime going up into the portal. It would have given so much more meaning to Optimus Prime's sacrifice, but I suppose with the themes of hope and unity and teamwork and, you know, that unite or fall tagline, that it kind of made for a better scene of a more hopeful ending, showing that you stand stronger together. Now I suppose they didn't know where to take Optimus Prime in space, considering they already did that before anyway with Transfers for Last Night, and well, we all know how that went. I suppose they just didn't want to repeat that same plot line or the same mistake. The only thing it kind of undercuts is Optimus Prime's sacrifice. You know, it didn't really have much weight to it considering he got saved straight away, and it was something you could have seen coming that they were going to go back for him. It would have been nice to have been just left surprised for once, but I suppose if they couldn't find a way to pay it off in the next movie, then I'm happy with a theatrical cut. The after credits scene in the test screening would have revealed that Optimus had survived the transwarp teleportation, and he's drifting through space slowly towards Unicron. He floats inside him, where his two big eyes open looking straight at Optimus, and it cuts to black. Sounds like a cool moment for sure, but it definitely would have ended on a more cliffhanger note. Now, one of the biggest changes I noticed was when the Autobots and Maximals charge into battle. In the teaser trailer, we got a more orange tinted kind of like background, and we had a completely different transformation for Optimus Primal. But compared to the final cut, it's this more dull and grey kind of look, and he also says Rhinox and Cheetor maximize instead of simply saying Maximals maximize.
Maximals, maximize!
The CGI looks very rough on Optimus Primal. I much prefer the teaser trailer version, but let me know what you think in the comment section below. There was also a line cut where Cheetor would have said to Optimus Primal, "We're right behind you, Big Bot." Now this is very unfortunate because while Cheetor always called Optimus Primal Big Bot in the Beast Wars cartoon,
it's a valuable piece of equipment. Take care of it.
I copy, Big Bot.
it gives him sort of more personality, and Cheetor in the final cut of the film really lacked that personality. And there we have it. That's the differences between the test screening and the final cut. Of course, share me your opinions in the comment section below. Which version did you prefer, the theatrical cut or the test screening? When I first watched this movie, I could definitely feel that there were some cuts and last minute changes, some drastic, some not so much. This movie definitely didn't go through the drastic changes like Transformers The Last Night. In fact, it's very similar to the B movie, just slight changes to better fit the narrative and overall plot. I think without a doubt we can all agree the one scene that should have definitely have been kept in the film was the transit scene, just because of the fanbase's love for that transit bus. Like mentioned, share me your thoughts in the comment section below. Now I will be releasing my full long hour review of Transformers Rise of the Beast this weekend, so to keep updated on that, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and click that notification bell to get all updates instantly. I've already done breakdowns of the movie's ending, what it means for the future with G.I. Joe, and also all the Easter eggs discovered in the film. So be sure to check them out. This has been Common and Cam, and until the next video guys, goodbye.